Three Kings, ladies and gentlemen, Three Kings, a subreddit to share our experiences following any kind of paranormal recipe or ritual. I read that every time just to get me going, and once I'm going, I can talk non-stop. I am your host, Fable Forge. I have with me my co-hostess with the mostest. I hope I said it right this time. Dapper, how you doing, Dapper?
Doing great. We should come up with a different name though. I mean, one for each week. Be a little change it up.
I have no idea, man. I
Oh,
have.
don't ask me. I don't know what this voice is.
It sounds vaguely Irish. I like it. I like it. So, gentlemen, we've been infrequent with the show. Today, I think we are going to explore Three Kings. Might as well do it. Might as well bite the bullet. Somebody 2 hours ago posted something called Three Kings Ritual Gone Wrong. I haven't read it. I'm going to read it online. I'm going to give my commentary online. We're going to scroll down and see what else we can talk about. But yeah, in general, Three Kings is this ritual. I used to believe in it at some point. I must have. Today, I think it's all explainable by science. So, or at least not science, maybe psychology. Science is too big of a word. Even psychology might be. And last week, what we did was sort of analyze the shoebox telephone ritual, which is another one that I had posted. So, continuing with that tradition, I'm going to be analyzing Three Kings. So, yeah, let's jump right in. So, somebody posted 2 hours ago. Three Kings ritual gone wrong. I have no idea what he's gonna say. I hope it's not embarrassing. Let's see. Whoever wrote this says, I've had a couple of supernatural paranormal experiences in my life, but there is one that stands out from them all. When I was about 28, I was living in an apartment with a friend of mine. Things were great between us. We got along so well and worked well as flatmates. Okay, that's probably Britain then. Or do people use the term flat? Never mind. One night we were pretty bored, so we decided to go onto the Three Kings subreddit and try to do a ritual. She was very much into the idea of it, but I wasn't because she had no experience with magic or meditation or hypnotism or anything outside of the norm. All right, this is a pretty reasonable person. So I can't remember which ritual it was. Oh, I guess it's not Three Kings after all. I should have read this after all, but I'll describe it as best I can. So I had to hypnotize her, which involved reading out a pre written script, pretty much saying, You are getting sleepy, better relax, even 10 times more relaxed, etc. The thing is, I actually hypnotized her. She fell into the hypnosis like instantly. Next, there was the ritual part, which involved meeting something hidden behind the door that will show her the future. I think this is the doors to the mind ritual. I think that's what it says. So I was reading out another pre-written script of her walking down a hall. Definitely does to the mind. Looking at different doors. Yep, that's it. Opening the doors and seeing what's on the other side. She described what was on the side doors as nothing or white light. When she finally got to the door at the end of the hall, she was very hesitant to open it. She opened the door and her face changed. A huge grimace came over her face, like a huge smile showing all of her teeth. Straight away, I felt light. Something was wrong, like she meant. And I told her to come out of the hypnosis, but she didn't. She started speaking gibberish that I didn't understand. And then finally, she said, he's here, over and over. And now this is where the next thing happens. Okay, little possession going on. The lamp next to her flickered a couple of times. It wasn't that intense, but it totally freaked me out. I tried to talk to her slowly to wake up again, but she just sat there with her head down, whispering gibberish. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at me with her own eyes. Again. What happened? She said. We talked into the night, but she seemed different. Over the next few weeks, she changed. She seemed quiet and distant and got angry a couple times, which wasn't like her. Gradually, she started to get better, but she wasn't exactly the same again. I recommend staying away from the Three Kings rituals unless you know what you're doing. So that's a ringing endorsement for this Reddit. So Dapper, first reactions. What do you think so far of what we have just read here?
I mean, first thing I noticed, the hypnosis can reprogram the mind, like that neuro linguistic programming stuff. You're kind of
Yeah,
altering the boot up of your mind's BIOS. So you're getting in there and you're messing with the settings. You can have all kinds of unknown things happen.
but
The other thing too is
yeah, go ahead.
just like drugs and other varied adult topics. Like you don't do any of this because if you do it wrong, it'll mess you up. So
Huh.
like doing these rituals, you got to be really careful. You can mess people's brains up by hypnotizing them wrong.
I agree with you. In fact, I have that in the sidebar for the subreddit.
Well,
Basically, be careful because regardless of whether you believe in paranormal stuff or not, it doesn't have to be occult. It doesn't have to be spiritual. You can still mess your mind pretty seriously because the mind is a delicate thing.
well,
How?
you're like dungeon delvers, or like cave delvers. You go down with the ropes and you swim in the little underground areas, and you get a cave in. You get monsters down there. You
Yeah,
never know what's in the subconscious.
good old spelunking. But here's the thing, though. I mean, she's not a hypnotist, right? Clearly, this person is reading from a script. So is
Yeah, but I mean, it's not that hard to hypnotize somebody, even if you're an amateur. It just takes the right conditions.
Ah, let's delve into the topic of hypnosis for just a little bit because one of the things I've always wanted to happen to me is to get hypnotized because I'm curious, right? And I wonder what it would be like. Would I feel it? Would I realize that I'm hypnotized? So I've tried, pretty much every time we go to a fair and you have this hypnotist on stage and he wants volunteers. I always raise my hand. I always sit there, and he always sends me back every single time he sends me back to the audience. Friends have tried who are good hypnotists, or at least they call themselves so. They can't do it, man. They can't hypnotize me, and it sucks because I want to feel what it's like.
I don't know.
But
Some people are vulnerable to it, and some people are immune to it. I've experienced that before. The other thing is, it's not necessarily that when they mess with your subconscious mind through hypnosis or hypnotism that you not necessarily that they get the results they want. It's like kind of poking around in there, and you're not sure you're going to get unintended consequences.
yeah, yeah. So based on that, based on the fact that we know that some people are more prone to hypnosis than others, then what this leads me to believe is that it's not that the OP was a great hypnotist, is that the person, right, her friend that she was working with was probably on the camp of being easy to hypnotize, right?
Oh
And
yeah, definitely. And I mean, you can watch people get hypnotized by like television and stuff too.
right, like commercials, right, in Times
No, it
Square.
is. It's a zoning. Like you get into a zone, and your mind becomes exceptionally receptive to stuff that comes into it. That's how propaganda stuff works.
That is starting to sound very likely to me because what's going on is we have this person, let's call her susceptible. I don't know if it's a hierarchy, a susceptible person, and she starts reading from the script. She falls into it, right? But remember, they knew what they were doing. It's not like she had no idea that she was just gonna go on there for no particular reason. Clearly, they read the Doors to the Mind story right before they get in, and as they were reading it, surely they thought of all the possible things that could go wrong, and sure enough, right, self-suggestion caused those things to go wrong. So that sounds pretty likely to me. We have a question from the chat. 44 Hydras. How exactly can someone be resistant to hypnotism? I wish I knew. Does it not
Not
affect all
everybody's
brains
mind
the same way?
is the same. I mean, how many people do you know with mental illness who have like schizophrenia or bipolar? Their brains
Yeah.
aren't like other people's brains. Everybody's brain's chemistry is unique and different, and everybody is also prone to a bit of lying or bullshitting. So you can't quite tell if they're telling the truth or not.
Yeah, yeah. I'll speak for myself, right? I can only talk of my own experience. I've been on stage with a hypnotist on stage for like 3 times, and then with a friend who did it in private. So that's four. Each of those 4 times, I keep asking myself, "Am I hypnotized yet?" And I think that ruins it. I think this self awareness is probably what prevents me from falling under, right?
Oh,
Because
definitely. The resistance is like a barrier that you keep up against it. For most hypnotism to work, the person has to willingly give themselves into it,
that's the weird
like a
part. Like
trance.
I part of me wants it, right? I think it would be super cool. I think it will be at least funny, and I mean, if I don't remember it later, there'll be a funny video for me to watch, and I'll go, "Oh my god, I was really out of it." So I want to do it. right? And I mean, I raise my hand, I sit down there. As it's happening, though, I don't know. Maybe the act of observing prevents it from happening, right? So clearly not the case here. Clearly, this person is absolutely susceptible. She had read beforehand that things could get spoopy in the doors to your mind ritual, and then spoopy things happen, right? So starts speaking gibberish, gives a Cheshire Green kind of smile at one point. Here it is, huge smile showing all of her teeth, anatomically unlikely, but I know what she's trying to say. And then is talking about gibberish, and then she doesn't remember what happened. I'm not gonna say this is false. This is probably true. This probably did happen, but I will not say that this was necessarily paranormal, even though it sort of hints at it. It sort of hints at this spiritual entity taking over. But I think I would need more than that to actually lean down that path. So far, I'm gonna go with susceptible person making spoopy things happen because that was her mindset. So
Absolutely. I mean, if you go in the direction of the supernatural, it's hard to prove that kind of stuff. It's hard to say, oh, this person was possessed by entities. The other two alternatives you can go down the path towards. One is the person was just playing along with it, that they let themselves be into this character, and that would be in the realm of, like, lying, which is skepticism, and these kind of things comes down to people don't tell the truth, or they want to make things exaggerated. The third path you could take it down is that MK Ultra stuff, that sometimes there is a way to cause effects in the brain that sort of glitch or short circuit it.
right, right. No, and that's, I have to strike a balance here because not everything that sounds far fetched is far fetched. Like what you mentioned, for instance, MK Ultra, right? Many people
Yeah.
still don't know that this actually did happen, and
Yeah.
still think it's like a weird conspiracy theory. It did
Well,
happen.
well, the conspiracy is how effective it was, or how prevalent it went on, even after they said that they quit doing it. The real thing is that they tried something. We just don't know what the actual results are. Is where the skepticism comes from, and it's the
Agreed.
same thing here. The story comes from someone else, so it's, did it happen? Did it not? Do we have video footage of it? That's where the skepticism comes in. But
Agreed.
there's also, it comes down to probabilities. It's always entirely probable something happens. It's just not usual or normal.
44 Hydras makes the point again, right? Not paranormal, but rather a brain that is convinced they are paranormal.
Right.
Agreed. I
And that's
agree.
Occam's razor will cut away. Often it's just that case. It's just they're convinced into it.
All right, I just found one. I just found one that should be juicy. Okay, so this is from 8 days ago. It's called
Juicy.
Tonight's the Night, Three Kings. So I'm finally doing it, says the OP. I have everything prepared, and my mom has agreed to be my spotter slash loved one. She thinks it's all bullshit, but she's willing to just chill in the living room with my cat.
Hey,
Well,
hey, spotters are super important. I just want to put that out. Anybody
I
listen, anything you
agree.
do like this, always have a spotter. Never go solo. It's
Don't be by
dangerous
your
out there
own.
alone.
Don't be by your own. Person says my cat has been acting weird all day. To be honest, okay. I'm trying not to think about that. He's really weird, so it could be anything. But it's almost like he wants to trap me on the couch and not let me go. I want to make light of this statement, but I can't because I have had experiences with cats myself, and
Oh,
I
lots of animals. Lots of animals.
yeah,
Dogs, even like
like
birds and stuff will do this.
yeah, my skeptic brain wants to say, ah, of course, there's nothing there. I cannot be skeptic about, at least not about this sentence. I'll read you later. Oh, I think we went over the Mara the cat story a few episodes ago, right? The one with the buzz and like she was scratching on my window.
Well, it's prevalent enough that you have entire mythologies dedicated to just about every culture around the world about animals reacting. This kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, didn't Egyptians have a thing for cats? I mean, I'm not sure I read that somewhere. Uh,
Right,
uh,
right. But I mean, the idea that they sense something that you don't, and that they get their head
yeah,
raised and they get worried
yeah.
when things are going odd or weird, like
There,
poltergeisty type activity.
there might be something to it. 44 Hydras aren't cats sensitive to paranormal events because they can see some electromagnetic spectrums outside the traditional colors. Maybe. I mean, I don't know enough. I'm sure there is a scientist somewhere who is an expert in cats and he can He has proof that they can see things we cannot, at least that science can measure. And that's where it gets difficult, right? Because if there is really a spiritual realm, then by definition, it's not going to show up in any machine that we can use to detect the physical realm. It's a different realm. So it's gonna be hard to prove. But anyway, let continue back to the story. If there is anyone online who has done it, any advice, anything to offer, anything to avoid, TIA. Thanks in advance. That's what it means. Great. All right, update. As of February 29 noon, so posted 8 days ago, which was 28. Okay, so this person came back the next day and he posted at noon. All right, very good. Well, thank you. This is it's rare to see someone come back and post. Let's see what happened. Hi everybody. Sorry it took me so long to jump back on here. I woke up right before 11 and I still felt so shitty and horrible. Uh-oh. And I have to update my best friend and this guy who is my friend in real life and wanted to know what happened. Okay, seems like there's a story here. So anyway, here's how it went as best as I can remember it. All right. To do this, I decided to use our study as a room for the ritual. It has a futon in it, and bookshelves, and lots of potted plants. I hung black curtains over the windows so the streetlights wouldn't shine in, and it just made sense because it's pretty isolated from the other side
Best
of the
kind of
house.
curtains.
Yeah, I guess. So what happens is that remember I'm a skeptic now about my own ritual, which is Three Kings. What happens is that you need darkness so that the brain doesn't have anything to focus on, and then the brain makes up its own stuff. So you want
Definitely.
darkness, right?
It's Plato's cave right there. Definitely.
Yeah, Planescape, Planescape. 44 Hydro. Doesn't the region specify no windows? It does. I mean, when it was created in Juby, honestly, that's a whole nother story. The windows were about the size of a brick, right? And literally, that's how they made. I mean, as you're building the wall with bricks, you leave one brick out because that's where the window's gonna go, and that's how big the windows were supposed to be. And it was easy to block. I think we used like wet newspapers and rags and stuff, and just darkened them. So
You know, I'm just going to make a curious observation about how many of these stories and mythologies come out of like basements where people are sitting around and like a campfire sort of scenario.
yeah,
In
no, but
schools and houses, attics, basements, all
it
that kind of stuff.
it sort of makes sense. I mean, basements typically, you hear the word basement, what do you think? You think quiet, you think empty, you think dark, right? Sometimes a little
Telling spooky
echoey.
stories to each other at night.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort. I mean, if he was the kitchen, that would be a little weird, right? Or the bathroom. So, all the haunting
Well,
happens.
they have windows though. That's the whole point. It's like in the
There is
closet, those
correct.
places that are dark.
Correct. So what this person is he or she, I don't know, whoever is posting this, basically darken the study room, right, using black curtains. So good job following the first steps. Good job. Pretty isolated from the rest of the house. That's right. When you're inside, you can hear. You cannot. Important. You can't hear people watching TV or anything in the den, which is where my mom was going to be with my cat. I supposed to notice important. The study is next door to my bedroom. They share a wall. Right. So isolated, right? This is something where you cannot hear and you cannot see because you made it dark. So good. All right, next one. I woke up at 3:30 a.m. to my alarm tone. So why 3:30? Because you're in your second REM cycle at 3:30, and at that point your mind is still likely, or at least more likely than usual, to go back
Well, it's
into.
also sort of occult symbolism, the numerology stuff. It has
Yeah,
meaning to the numbers.
the
Three
witching
three three is
hour.
always witching hour. Yeah.
Yeah, the witching hour. Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the cold side. I want to think he's RAM cycles, but we'll see.
Well,
Uh
not that it has a cold power, but people like to put those numbers into everything. People throw like 666, or they'll pick 7, or like
fair
power
enough.
numbers. People just because it feels right.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So his alarm tone is toss a coin to your Witcher. Okay, he likes the Witcher thing in Netflix, which is always a nice way to wake up. And I felt like pure another shit on a stick. Well, it's 3 a.m. and you just woke up. I'm a grumpy asshole when I don't get enough sleep. So this isn't too out of the ordinary. All right. Well, foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. Someone who doesn't like waking up because it makes him grumpy has just been waking up at 3:30 a.m. for paranormal purposes. 44 Hydras hits the sack at 3 a.m. Oh, good lord. Been this way for about 2 months. My dream cycles are out of whack. I would agree, my friend. I get some sleep. It's important. All right. 3:30 a.m. and I woke up. I climbed down from my love bed and checked to make sure that my phone had charged. It had. It turned on total silence except for phone calls, which is odd for me. Normally have vibrate on, and I push it into the pocket of my sweatpants. The whole thing with the phone, the ritual specifies that a number of things, right? It says if you leave the door one way and you find it in a different way, then cancel. If you leave the phone charging and it doesn't charge, cancel. Like it's checking for a number of things, for lack of a better word, fuckery, right? We want to make sure that nothing weird is happening because it's a bad sign if it does. And again, these are lessons that I saw happen back in those days. So we didn't have phones, obviously, but this is just testing, obviously, for things that might be changed and might be signs of tampering, for lack of a better word. I lit the candle, a huge pillar candle my mom had, stuck on a candle plate so it's easier to carry. And I did do one thing that I didn't think would after alter the ritual at all. I took a Vistaril. Oh no! For those of you who don't know what Vistaril is, it's an anxiety medication. One I use as needed med to complement the rest of my medications. Oh no no no! My anxious ass has some extra special anxiety about doing 3K, so I was like, this should help. No, this will not. This is gonna go. This is gonna go sideways, Dapper. This is gonna go
That's
sideways.
where the evening went terribly wrong.
Yeah, this is not so. Look, back in the original place, I mean, some kids were sniffing glue. They sniffed thinner, uh, and we actually called it thinner. That's like the word in Spanish. I don't know how to translate it because we always use the word thinner, which is English. Is the thing that you use as a paint remover,
Oh
or a
yeah,
or
people huff that in bags.
yeah. So not good. People who did that always had the worst experiences. So I wrote this in the original stuff when I wrote it the first time. I said, if you have mental issues or if you're under drugs, just don't do this. Just don't. And I'll say
Well,
it again.
those substances are mental lubrication. That's why people drink alcohol before they try to talk to others.
Yeah, I mean, just from reading that, I don't know what's coming ahead, but just reading that alone, I think that this is gonna get a little bit wild. So let's see. We have a long way to go. I better catch up. All right. Once I had swallowed it, oops, I moved out into the hallway. My mom was standing there with my cat, and she was like, "Still think this is bullshit, but I'll stay awake until you're done." What a nice supporting mom. I reminded her on how to come get me. First call my name, then call my phone, and if yeah, then the water to the head. So I don't know why Dapper. Sometimes people get fixated inside their own heads, and they don't respond to outside stimuli. And eventually, we just started splashing water on their face because they were not. And also, it was bad luck to touch them. It's hard to explain. I'm not gonna get into that. All right, I explained all of this quickly. She told me she remembered and looked at her watch and told me you better get to it if you're still doing this. I'm sorry, mom. I'm sorry, Opie's mom, that I made this happen. I feel responsible. I nodded and turned to look into the study. First check, the door was still open. Second check, right? Remember the checks I was talking about. I could hear the fan going, so I walked inside. And I made sure that once my eyes had adjusted a little bit, I didn't look into either mirror as I sat down. My mom shouted good luck to me. I remember that. I settled the candle into my lap and it started. So the thing about the mirrors, I think you're not supposed to look at it because I think the brain is more likely to create something when you don't directly give it something to contradict it with, right? So if you are looking at the mirror with your side vision, right, out of the corner of your eye, then anything could be there, right? And the brain will make sure to put something there. It will make it up if it has to. But if you actually turn around and face it, then it's either there or it's not, right? And the brain is not in creative mode anymore, it's now in receptive mode. And the purpose of the ritual is to get it creative, so you're not supposed to look. And furthermore,
People freak themselves out over just about anything.
if you actually look and you're in a state of mind, right, where your brain is already, the circus is in town already, right, and you actually look and there is something freaky in there, then it gets freakier. right? So
Well, I mean, how many cartoons you watch growing up where the characters looked around and like the branch of the tree was an arm out to grab them, and every little shadow was some terrible monster. But
I,
no, it's just
that
shadows.
happen all the time, and there is a term for that, pareidolia, right? Pareidolia. So yeah,
Yep.
don't look, right? Let your brain be creative. I think the whole point of this exercise, I sort of hesitate using the word exercise, but the whole point of this is to bring out from your subconscious, whatever you have in there,
It
and
is it is exercise because you're jumping to a lot of conclusions here.
that is very true. And we want that brain to bring up those conclusions. So you're not supposed to look. You're supposed to let it work. So good. He didn't look. All right. Continue. I was anxious. This is normal, I guess. I've been terrified of the dark since I was a kid. Oh God, why did you do this, OP? And I was diagnosed with a pretty hefty anxiety disorder as a teen. Double crap. But as time went on, don't know how much time I took off my watch. It seemed to be okay. I have been sweating buckets as my stomach churned, but the fan was nice. I cooled off as I calmed down, and the noise it made helped a lot. Oh, you have no idea. I was beginning to think I might actually be okay. This is fine. I thought it's totally cool. The fan is there to make white noise. That's what the fan is there for, and to give you sensory input on your skin, so that you don't focus on the sensory input of your eyes and ears, right? And once you get white noise, then it's sort of like what are the initials for that, Dapper? When they grab EVPs, what do they call it? When they leave a recorder on in a room and then come back and there's a
Oh yeah,
ghost.
they're EVPs. It's
EVPs.
electro something.
Yeah, electronic voice phenomena. Electronic voice
Yeah, yeah,
phenomena.
yeah.
That's what the fan is for. The fan is there to just to give your brain something to work with, just so that you can
Well,
start
people
to.
consider it it's a medium. It's a form of something coming through like a doorway. If you look at it from the occult side of it, but from the science side, it is just a self hypnosis
I,
tool.
yeah,
It's like a
it's
lubricant.
it's like white noise in those old TVs. When you go to a channel that's not there and goes, and sometimes you heard things in there. Not really, right? You didn't hear anything. Your brain thought it did, because the brain wants to make sense of things. All right. So when I say it became 100% not okay, very very quickly, I mean that. Oh, I'm dreading reading this. It was like the flip of a switch. I had been sitting there totally okay in almost total silence except for the fan. I know. And then I heard something else. Does anyone else have a sound from childhood when they hear it is totally jarring? For me, it's the sound of an old radiator switching on. It's a pretty specific sound. I hadn't heard it since I was 11. Then last night I heard it. And not just any radiator, my radiator. The one I had in my bedroom at the time. I heard that sound hovering over my left shoulder, and I felt like a chill had gone up my spine. I had to remind myself to not hold on to the plate too tightly, not wanting my fingers to go numb. Starting to go sideways. So remember, this exercise, I'm going to use the word exercise again, is bringing things up from your subconscious. And whatever happened with his room somehow got paired or attached to the sound of his radiator. I have not, by the way, I don't know if he's a he or a she, but whatever happened in the OP's room is not about the radiator, right? Radiator just got attached to it and it reminds him of it, but there's something else going on. Okay, sounds are one of those things that I've always been able to remember really well. Yep, that's how it works. I have a horrible memory in general from years of disassociating shit away, sorry, but sounds stick with me. So when I heard the creak of a familiar door, here it is, and the sound of that radiator, familiar, right? This is stuff from your subconscious. I knew something was going on. I was a weird kid, at least among my particular subset of peers. I like to pour all of myself into things that I love, like reading books about the Crusades and studying Latin and memorizing Morse code from my dad and making sure there was a spring of lavender on my windowsill just in case of emergencies. Interesting statement. Does that make sense? What does the spring of lavender do for emergencies, Dapper? Maybe this is something you know that I don't.
No, I don't. I don't know. That's like one of those old from the motherland sort of stories you get where these people, the mother passes down to her daughter,
Like,
from
yeah,
family member to family member, and they're
like
just, oh,
tying
just put
a.
a sprig of lavender. It'll keep the spirits away. Or
I
who knows what's
remember,
going on.
was it my grandma? Someone tied a red ribbon on a branch tree to keep away evil eye, or something like that. I understood. I like research and facts and truth. I was terrified of the moon, which is why when the chanting started, oh my god, I was able to recognize the language. Now I guess it didn't start as chanting. No, but just as a whisper. The words were jumbled too fast for me to recognize, but the language was apparent. Okay, what language? He says he recognized it. So there I was, sitting in a room with the only light a candle that I held on my lap, and this was all from somewhere to my left, behind my shoulder blade. So far, I have done a good job of not paying attention to peripherals. So again, here's another thing that I don't understand is just empirical observation. Left one usually was bad. Right one usually was, I'm not gonna say good. It was not as bad, or maybe not as overt. And I have no idea why. I'm just an observation. So in this
I
case,
think there's a specific cultural connotation because some cultures don't have that left right, or the left right reversed.
yeah, it's probably culture. It's probably in
Every culture has a version of it, but they're not all the same.
yeah, and you know how in the Judeo-Christian tradition, like the right path is the good path, and the left path is the evil. In fact, a synonym for left is sinister, right? Literally is what it means. So anyway, but it was unavoidable then because I could see myself smiling. Oh crap! In the mirror to my left, there was a flash of teeth, shit, and the slope of my nose, and longer hair than I've had in a long time. And that smile, it was something unnatural. So here you go. This is the id possibly, right, or something that he perceives about himself or herself as being negative starting to manifest because that's what this exercise does, and there it is, shows up on the left, sure enough, right? All right, I was scared to talk. I didn't want to speak, didn't want to break that seal because I knew that if I did, I would try to fill up the entire void with my chatter. Hmm. Who are you? Then he speaks anyway. Who are you? I asked. My voice was slurred as if I had too much to drink, and it came out more quiet than I intended. I felt bone tired. This,
Honestly, I think this person is lucid dreaming. I think they put themselves into
yes,
an REM cycle, and they're just sort of controlling this dream and hallucinating.
that's exactly what's happening, and that's exactly what I was about to say. This sounds like somebody who's groggy from being sleepy, right? Slurred voice, low voice, feeling tired. So I think that's what's happening here. All right, why are you here? You never realize how much of your peripherals can see until something like this happens because she stops smiling. Oh, it's a she, and her mouth stretched open, and all I could hear was static. Yeah, this is getting freaky. Another sound from memory. There are people who say all static sounds the same, that is just white noise, but that's not true. Okay, well, she's okay. Well, I'll take it. There is old television static and new television static and noise machine static and lost connection static, but this static stuck out to me because it was from the old radio my dad used to have when we lived with my nana. He would turn it on sometimes and try to find a station, but he would always get frustrated and swear it was busted. He had had it since he was a kid. My great grandpa got it for him, the one who died before he was born. A pattern emerges, Dapper. What is the first sound this person heard? Old radiator. Second sound this person heard, a door opening that recognized. Now we get static, but not just any static. Static from an old radio from her dad. There is a
Oh
pattern
no!
here.
I hope this doesn't lead to watching Candle Cove.
This is. Oh my God, I remember that one. Oh boy! Don't bring me into that side way. Pattern will never come back from that side road. But what I'm trying to say here is that everything that this person is experiencing are things from her past, are things that are meaningful from the past that attach themselves to experiences that she had, and this is her subconscious trying to surface them, to bring them out. All right, let's continue.
So I looked up lavender, and I guess people just grow it in their windowsill. But it is associated with sleeping and calmness and dreams. People use it to help dream divination, and they also use it to help fall asleep because the aroma is pleasant.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. Well, good to know. Good to know. All right. So here's the jump scare of the episode. So she says all that came from her mouth or my mouth, I guess, was static. It filled my ears, and I had to try my best not to let it take me over. White noise is something of a trigger for me, for my panic and my disassociation. I cleared my throat and held back everything I wished to say. I remember wondering then how much time had passed. I felt like it had been hours, days even, of me sitting in that chair. Yeah, it's. I want to say this is a dream, and I don't know if I'm saying this for my own sake because I don't want to feel guilty, but I want to say this is a dream. This sensation that a lot of time has passed when you just woke up, consistent with dreams. These clearly supernatural things that are being observed, right? An image of yourself that moves on her own and opens their mouth in ways that shouldn't be possible, and static comes out. This is all this is symbolic material, I would say, from your subconscious being put into craft like a dream. All right, my phone was ringing, but it felt far away because you're dreaming. That's because it wasn't my phone, at least not then. As much as I had been focusing on my left, it's like I had forgotten that there was a mirror on my right, too. This phone had an older ringtone, not one from my iPhone, because I figured we all know the basic iPhone ringtones, but something older, something antique. Yeah, that's I would say that's your mind just making symbols that sort of match the overall picture that it's trying to communicate to you subconsciously. Then it stopped ringing as the static seemed to dim. Something else started. Oh my God, this continues. Side note, relevant info. My dad used to read me poetry when I was a kid. That's how he taught me to read, actually, with classics, which always seemed to weird people out. No, there's nothing wrong with the class. I learned myself that way. Once they meet my dad, they seem to understand it a bit more. He's a weird guy, and he raised me for 9 years by himself. There's this poem called Ozymandias. I know that poem. That's the statue in the desert. Beautiful poem by Percy B. Shelley that I memorized when I was little, like really little. I used to walk around singing it like it was a song, and it always made my dad weirdly proud that I was able to memorize stuff like that. So yeah, this is relevant. So bear with me. Yeah, of course it's relevant. These all of these things are from your past, dear OP. Right? The poem is from your past, and there's an emotional connection to your father. The radiator is from your bedroom. The sound of the door is from your bedroom. Possibly the older ringtone in this phone is also from your past, and all these things are attaching themselves. There are issues that happened to you years ago that are being hinted at by all of these clues from that period. Nothing so far. Notice that nothing so far is from the present, or even is new, right? It's nothing that you haven't recognized as coming from your past before. Continuing. To my right, it looked like I was sitting in a chair, not a chair like I was sitting in just then, but a chair from long ago. A chair like the one my dad used to keep. That's the fifth thing from the past. In his office when I was young. But it wasn't this me, but another, looking older as far as I could tell, blood dripping from wet nostrils over chapped lips, freckles standing out more like she's been in too much sun. Not sure how to interpret that. Older version of you that's been in too much sun and has blood in her nose.
So we've identified OP as a female.
As a female, I don't understand what this means. So we have a version of herself on the left that opens her mouth and produces static, and we have a version from herself on the right that seems older and it has, you know, too much sun apparently and blood.
Chaos and order. That's what I'm reading here.
Chaos and order, you think? All right. And when her mouth opened, oh, she speaks. When her mouth opened, she said, "Oh, my name is Ozymandias," from the poem. "King of kings, look upon my works, ye mighty and
Yep.
despair."
It's
Yeah,
like left pillar, right pillar.
there it is. There it is. It's part of the poem. It sure is. She was. It's a beautiful poem, by the way. They find this statue of this in the middle of the desert, and it says, "Look upon my works, ye mighty and despair." There's no works there. Everything's broken. A beautiful poem. All right, she was saying this, and from the corner of my eye, I could see that her lips were moving, but it's almost as if there was an audio delay. Okay. I didn't understand what was going on. It felt like I was getting more and more tired the longer I listened. She began to recite the poem in its entirety, but then I remembered I was in the middle of doing a fucking ritual called Three Kings. No wonder my brain was reverting back to the information it knew about kings. That would make sense, right? Sort of, sort of. I mean, it's not. I mean, this could have been called three chairs, right? Or it could have been called two mirrors. I don't think it's necessarily tied to the concept of king as an autocratic ruler of a kingdom. It's more like this is bringing parts of your ego that are represented, as you were saying, Dapper, chaos and order, or in other people is id and superego, or whatever
Right,
duality
right.
you have
And
within you. Go
and
ahead.
the brain builds. It's like a bird. Builds a bird their nest out of various parts they find. The brain builds its communication out of all the experiences we've had.
Right. Right. That said, I would not rule it out. I mean, clearly this person is in the middle of a dream, and dreams usually or sometimes are influenced materially by the last thing you were thinking of. So you were thinking of kings, maybe you thought of kings. What are you trying to tell me? I ask. Good question. It was getting harder and harder to keep my eyes trained forward, to hold on to the candle plate. I do not understand. On my left, her mouth still open, static oozing out. On my right, fingers twisting in her lap as she recited a poem that I thought I had long forgotten. The noise swelled. I felt a panic attack starting in my stomach. Oh, I feel bad. And I didn't know what to do. I did the only thing I really thought I could do at that point. I opened my mouth and I started to scream. Jesus, now I'm starting to feel bad. I don't know how long I did this. So she's screaming in her dream. Here's what's happening. I mean, the ritual, the exercise worked as intended. It brought conflicting parts of her psyche to the surface, right? But it did not resolve them. It did not resolve them. The one on the left was saying static, nothing to work with there. The one on the right is reciting a poem, nothing to work with there. You just see the conflict appear and you don't really resolve it. And that leads to frustration, right? And the response to frustration, she says, I opened my mouth and I started to scream. Yeah, that's what happened when you have conflict that you cannot, fix one
Well,
way or
you
another.
know, in the old days, the wise men, up on, or the seers, the oracles, the kind of not right in the head people, would get visions, and they'd tell these visions like this, or they couldn't quite describe it, and then they'd have to analyze the signs and come up with their own answers. I mean, that's what a lot of superstition and magic and stuff was for many centuries. Was people would get these visions,
Yeah,
and they'd try to decipher them as great prophecies,
yeah.
and it may just be the subconscious, but sometimes subconscious speaks garbage to you. Like when you dream, your brain just vomits up your experiences, and sometimes it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes that lack of sense can be frustrating and can cause you to just break out, right? So that's what's happening here. She started screaming. All right, she says, and then I was blinking and the lights were on, and my mom was standing there, freaking out in front of me. I was dripping in water. Thank you, mom. What a nice mom this OP has. I thought you weren't supposed to let the candle go out, she screamed at me, because she fell asleep. That's why the candle went out. I was nauseous. I blinked at her through my glasses, covered in drops of water. What do you mean? I did what you told me to, says the mom. But after I called you and you didn't answer, I found you just sitting there in the dark. So here comes the water bucket.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream. She fell asleep, right? She fell asleep. The mother walked in, sees the candle went out. She's just sitting there. She's not answering because she's sleeping, right? And after enough not answering, I mean, the mom just grabbed the water and did what you would do. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, OP, if you ever listen to this episode, I I want to almost apologize to you for having been part of what ended up being a bad experience, right? I still leave the responsibility with you because you chose to do it, but I still feel bad that it was a bad experience, and I suggest that you explore the issues that are clearly in your psyche, perhaps in a safer way, right? It doesn't have to be Three Kings. Sometimes you just need a good friend or someone to talk to, or a therapist, or mom, or anyone who can help you bring out, like, what is it about your past that is connected to these issues about the radio with the dad, and the radiator, and the poem also with the dad, and the door. Like, there is things that can be helped, right? But I think there are better ways to bring them out than Three Kings. And I am 100% speaking up against my own ritual. I Yeah, it's not a good thing. And remember, we did it in Juby before. Yeah,
And also remember with these sort of circumstances that it's not necessarily that the message is about her father or the radiator, but
yeah,
that she finds a sort of comfort in those things,
yeah.
and they use that to deliver the message to her. So these kind of cases, the message could be delivered about something else, but they deliver it through the channel of these familiar sites.
Right.
Like I know it's movies and it's storytelling, it's not real, but most movies characters are talked to by like gods or powerful forces through faces they recognize. They always come to you as your loved ones.
True. True. That's a good point. That so in other words, it might not necessarily be literally about that, right?
Right. So
Is
it could be about her father, or it could be that they use her father's image to deliver these messages to her from her subconscious,
exactly.
and they could be some outside entity, or they could be a part of her own mind which is trying to communicate with her.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So anyway, OP, thank you so much, whoever this person is. Uh, the Crimson Cave. Thank you so much, the Crimson Cave, for sharing your experience with us. I think you're incredibly brave for having done this, and also incredibly generous for having posted it and for having given us so much detail. So thank you for that. I certainly hope that you're feeling better by now, and I certainly hope that you are able to just figure out what these issues are, if any, and find a healthy way to solve them. Right. And when I say healthy, I mean not through rituals, especially not through this one. Notice how the first comment uh, gets on her case for the mentally stuff, and then she talks about visceral. So yeah, just watch out with medicines and rituals, guys. It's not a good combo. But yeah, overall, she seems like a wonderful person, and I really hope she feels better. So that was that. That was the episode. It's amazing how quickly 1 hour goes. When we have something interesting to go to. So I think this is gonna be a new format. We're going to jump in on late on
And we're still
Saturday.
going to invite people on if any of interesting story people want to come on and discuss anything from ghosts, supernatural, the occult, whatever. We'll definitely have people on, but we can
A
read
hundred
these.
percent. Anybody who wants to be a guest, all you have to do is message me. I'll take anyone, right? And it doesn't have to be that you're super special. I mean, we have had special people before. We've been very lucky, but it doesn't have to be that way. We just want to have a human connection with someone and talk about paranormal stuff. So good stuff. 44 Hydras says it was fun. Glad I was there to listen. Thank you, 44 Hydras. Thank you very much,
We
and
appreciate you, 44.
I appreciate it. And everybody, have a safe rest of the weekend, and I'll see you guys.
I'm messing with Audacity, and I am looking to try to launch a. It'll be more like a podcast. It won't be a live experience, but I will hopefully be launching a show of my own.
We'll promote the hell out of it.
All
I
right,
think
wow,
I
get
think
out.
people who have heard you before, they already know what kind of thing to expect. So yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. So good night, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you all next week. Have a
Thank
safe.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.